Welcome to Hood War Stories. In this episode, I'll be discussing the war between the Treetop Pirus and the Fruittown Pirus. In the 1980s, Compton became much more violent than in the 70s. Pirus had spread through the city from the west side to the north side to the limits on the east. They all had rivalries with their Crip counterparts. The Crips, who heavily outnumbered the Pirus, also fought each other. Pirus, however, maintained alliances between various sets up until the 90s. During the early 90s, there had been some rift developing between Piru sets and Compton, mostly over women and drugs, but it was quickly squashed. This particular dispute between the Treetop Pirus and the neighborhood Pirus was different. It wasn't resolved, and things began to escalate. The Treetop Pirus are centrally located in Compton, south of Rosecrans, between Willowbrook and Arambe. The streets in this neighborhood were named after trees: spruce, cedar, elm. The neighborhood Pirus on the west side of Compton, on Central Avenue, south of Rosecrans. The rivalry started when the Treetop Pirus and the Fruittown Pirus got into a dispute over jerk points. The Fruittown Pirus was a much larger set than Treetop, and it got its name from the streets in the neighborhood: peach, pear, cherry, plum, and other fruits. The two sets were separated by a single street, Rosecrans. The conflict between them over drugs became more intense and worsened when the neighborhood Pirus came in and aligned themselves with Fruittown. On March 9th, 1994, Sean Ford was murdered when several neighborhood Pirus approached him on the sidewalk and unleashed a hail of gunfire. Sean was the younger brother of a high-ranking Treetop member named Derek Ford, also known on the streets as Pot. This was the first time the rift between the Pirus resulted in a murder. The streets knew Pot wouldn't let the crime go unavenged. Pot was one of the highest bidders for retaliation on set and was well respected in the streets. A little over a week later, on March 18th, 1994, at around 8 p.m., a few neighborhood Piru gang members were driving on Compton Boulevard, just east of Central Avenue. A large yellow four-door car speeds up and cuts 10 feet in front of their vehicle. 3 Treetop Pirus jumped out the car and ran towards them. When the neighborhood Pirus saw the men running towards them, they jumped out the car and started to run. All 3 Treetop Piru members aimed their pistols and began shooting at them. The driver was killed immediately, falling dead in the street. Their surviving victim was shot in the leg, but managed to escape the barrage of bullets flying towards him. The Treetop members ran back to the vehicle, got in, and fled. One of Treetop's main hangout spots is a house on the 400 block of Spruce Street. This house was a meeting place for the Treetops, where they conducted gang business. 2 hours after the shooting, police drove to the house on Spruce Street. In the home, they found cocaine, cash, and ammunition for a .45 caliber handgun. Pot, Noogie, Slug, and A-Ball, who were all from Treetop, ended up going down for the murder. During the morning of May 27, 2006, at approximately 9 a.m., Carly, who was from Treetop, left his home to head to the liquor store to buy some cigarettes. At the store, Carly saw Harold, who was a member of Fruittown. Harold said, "Hey, with that fruits light." Carly understood that statement as a gang threat and responded, "Nigga, so what?" After paying for cigarettes and chips, Carly began walking home. As he was heading there, he saw Harold and 2 other Fruittown members sitting in the car. The front passenger door opened, and a Fruittown member known as Cheek stepped out of the vehicle. He proceeded to put the hood of his black sweatshirt over his head, and with his right hand, reached into his waistband. In the meantime, Carly kicked off his slippers and ran. Carly heard Cheek say, "Fuck Tay-Tops," and heard 5 to 6 gunshots. Carly thought he felt something, but was not sure. His adrenaline was rushing. While he ran to the barbershop, he asked a woman in the shop to dial 911 and realized he was bleeding from his buttocks and hips. Carly's sister came into the barbershop. Carly told her that he had been shot by some Fruit Loops, which is a derogatory term for the Fruittown gang. However, when deputies questioned him, Carly said he had been shot by Mexicans that belonged to the T-Flats gang. Carly gave the deputies misinformation because he was afraid that he'd be labeled as a snitch, which would have put him and his family in jeopardy. He was taken to the hospital where he underwent surgery. He remained at the hospital for approximately 4 days. Approximately 1 month later, Carly was arrested for possession of an assault rifle. During the interview, Carly told detectives who shot him, Harold Carey, James Cox, and Michael J. Flores from Fruittown, were all convicted of attempted murder. A few weeks later, on June 10th, 2006, Deshaun, Ozzy, and Devon went to the gas station to buy cigars. While at the gas station, they saw Edward across the street. Edward was from Fruittown, Piru. Deshaun, Ozzy, and Devon began walking down the street, which was within territory of the Treetop gang. Edward then approached, pointed a semi-automatic handgun, and fired 15 rounds at the three men. Ozzy was killed, and Deshaun was seriously wounded. Devon escaped by ducking behind a car. Devon, who was armed as well, pulled out his revolver and returned fire as Edward tried to flee. Initially, Deshaun refused to cooperate with the police, fearing gang retaliation. A few days after the shooting, however, Deshaun identified Edward as the shooter. Deshaun had known Edward for many years when their gangs used to be on speaking terms. 1 week prior to the preliminary hearing, Deshaun received several phone calls threatening to kill him and his family if he snitched on Edward. On the day of the preliminary hearing, Edward placed 2 phone calls to leaders of both Treetop and Fruittown, during which they discussed unsuccessful attempts to convince Deshaun not to testify. Edward Fales from Fruittown was ultimately convicted of first-degree murder and attempted murder. He was sentenced to 90 years to life. Shootouts and skirmishes continued between the gangs in the years that followed, pressing each other in traffic.
Fade away. This the nigga Russia from Tanks, blood.
Damn, blood. Stop doing that, bro. Piru, I'm not from Tanks, blood.
Where you from?
Treetop, Compton, Piru.
Well, I don't fuck with y'all. Piru, go to bed, bitch. Fruittown, Compton, I'm knocking Tanks.
In 2012, Compton Menace, who's from Fruittown, and YG 400, who's from Treetop, were both scheduled to perform at the annual Dub Car Show, which was held at the LA Convention Center in downtown Los Angeles. The star-studded event was scheduled to have performances by Nipsey, Tyga, and Akon. However, all that was cut short after YG hit the stage, and in the middle of his performance, Compton Menace's camp marched near the stage and started flashing gang signs. This led to a physical altercation, which turned into a Royal Rumble. This confrontation resulted in gunfire outside the convention center. I'd like to thank you guys for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe.